What's going on, guys? Another Phil Gaimon reaction video. This is a recent video he did called Pro Tips, How Pro Cyclists and Runners Use Blood Tests for Training and Nutrition. This is something I'm really big on. I think it's great that he's getting his blood test, making this public. So he's partnered with this company called Inside Tracker. So I'm going to react to this entire video. So I think it's worth at least having a look at the service that he's sort of advertising, give them a bit of a shout out. Why am I so big on blood tests? Look, I think it's interesting. Riders will spend tens of thousands of dollars on equipment. They'll do hundreds or if not thousands of dollars worth of supplements, massages, and all this sort of stuff, and then they won't get a blood test. The blood test seems like people get a bit freaked out by it, find it's not necessary, it's a bit weird to do, but I would say a blood test, if you're even a moderate or high-level performing athlete, a regular blood test is a really good thing to do, and these services like Inside Tracker that are making it more achievable at home, easier to do, and having the results more practical, so actual recommendations are really good. So you order your blood test. They send you a blood test form, which you take to a clinic. I think this is. I'm in Australia. Most people watching, I think most of my audience are in Australia, so this isn't available in Australia yet, but there's similar services. They draw your blood, you get to see your results, then they give you recommendations based on those results. So what are they testing for? They've got the usual things, your cholesterol, triglycerides, glucose, then some performance-related things, so vitamin D and calcium, and then the ones I'd be really interested in, ferritin, hemoglobin. This costs $189 US, which seems kind of expensive, but in the grand scheme of things, if you get this done and you find out, oh, I was low in iron, or my vitamin D was really low, like that's invaluable information if you're training a lot. So the price I think is pretty reasonable, definitely worth it. So no issues with that. So that's a service there, Inside Tracker. But let's watch the video. Phil is speaking with a scientist from Inside Tracker who are speaking about his results.
So it looks like, if we just start at the top with your vitamin D, it looks like over the month, your vitamin D went from 29 to 47.
All I do is ride outside in the sun. Why do I always have to supplement vitamin D?
That's a great question. So basically with the sun, so the sun is helpful for producing vitamin D within the body, but what it really does is it helps you to maintain your current vitamin D level rather than being able to take your vitamin D from a lower level to a higher level. So it does a great job of maintaining, but unfortunately, vitamin D is one of those things that's actually best absorbed with a supplement.
That's really interesting. I actually didn't know that. So yeah, so vitamin D, she's saying there, if you're low on vitamin D, getting more sun's not necessarily going to help you. You need a supplement with it. And yeah, you wouldn't know that. You say if you're a tan person, you're in the sun a lot, your vitamin D, you might assume your vitamin D is fine, but this just shows you need to get it tested because you just don't know.
Supplement. So there are some foods that do contain vitamin D. So some of those fatty fish, mushrooms, stuff like that. But the best way to actually get enough vitamin D to meet your total requirements is actually from a supplement. So
this is something I'm going to get into later in the video as well. But in general, these recommendations. So she's saying here, if you're low on vitamin D, you should just supplement and not rely on food.
At Inside Tracker, we typically take a food first approach, but with certain biomarkers.
So she's saying she usually has a food first approach in terms of recommendations, but in this case with vitamin D, she's recommending a supplement. I would say for most people, I would recommend just supplementing if you find you're low on something. It's really difficult to change a diet. It's something if you find, I'm low in vitamin C, so you start eating foods that are higher in vitamin C or something like that. You might change that for a few days, a week, a couple of weeks. Eventually, you're probably going to go back to the diet you're eating before. It's very difficult to make diet changes long term. So if you're relying on a diet change to increase your levels in a specific nutrient, I would recommend, if possible, just supplement. That way, as well, you don't have the stress around it. So you should try and eat more foods that are going to give you those levels. But ideally, you take a supplement as well. It takes away the stress related with it. And then you're not having to track like all your food each day and be like, oh, did I get this exact amount each day? Just trying to find these foods, eat these foods that you normally wouldn't eat. Like a supplement is just easier. You're going to be getting the right amount. So the food first approach thing, in some cases, I would usually say supplements can be really good. Just takes the hassle out of it.
Then the next would be the iron group. So it's interesting. So you said you had red meat more often than you had before, and that shows. So if we look at your ferritin levels, it looks like your ferritin has increased over the past month from 158 to 222.
Ferritin is the stored iron in your body, so it's a better measure of how your iron levels are in terms of performance. So he's pretty high. 222 is is definitely up there. He's on 158 to 222. So red meat has heme iron highly absorbed, so that'll boost his ferritin levels. Let's see, what else is hematocrit? 45.3 to 48.3. 48.3 is a pretty high hematocrit. Maybe he's doing some and what's his hemoglobin? 17.2. Yeah, so I think he said he's reduced his training volume and he's gone up to altitude, so that could be a slight increase in his red blood cells. But yeah, he's pretty high hematocrits. Interesting.
I'm wondering if you're also supplementing with iron.
Yeah, I take First Endurance multivitamin anyway, and then Optogen, so there is iron in that, but I've taken that for both tests.
Okay, so that one is more likely dietary.
Yeah.
Impacted.
So hear what I mean. So, like if you're low in iron, and then this is what they're recommending: eat more rockfish, pork loin. How often are you cooking pork loin? Non-fat yogurt. Or Cornish game hens. I mean, like if you actually are low in iron and your ferritin's low and you need to increase it, you should probably just be taking an iron supplement. Non-fat yogurt though, I'm pretty sure that's not high in iron. Give me one sec. Yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on. So I'm on Fazan's, this Food Standards Australia, New Zealand, where they have a database of very accurate food testing. So we've got vanilla yogurt, low fat. And let's look it down in terms of what's the nutritional information of it. So if you go down here to iron, per 100 mil, it's got 0.1 milligrams of iron, which is hardly anything. So if you had an entire liter of low-fat yogurt, you'd be getting 1 milligram of iron. I think for males, the daily recommended is like 8 to 10 milligrams of iron. So I'm not sure why they put yogurt. Firstly, isn't a good source of iron. And calcium, which is obviously yogurt's very high in calcium, inhibits iron absorption. So yogurt is a terrible food to eat if you're trying to increase your iron. So I'm not sure why that looks like a bug on Inside Tracker, or there's some mistake, definitely some mistake there. That should not be in the food groups to increase your iron. So please, if your iron is low, adding non-fat yogurt isn't going to increase it.
All the ribeyes.
Yeah, it looks like those ribeyes are showing up in a number of places, which I think is also interesting. Let's see. When it comes to the hemoglobin, so you said that you were also at altitude.
Correct.
So that can also be a result of being at altitude.
Yeah. So he was saying he was staying in Park City. Park City, Utah is, I think, depends where you are in Park City, sits around 2,300 meters. I stayed in Park City for a month before tour of Utah in 2018. I think we were sleeping at like 2,600 meters. So yeah, somewhere that's definitely in that range that if you're doing altitude, sleeping at altitude, that's the range that's recommended. So definitely, if he's a responder, you'll be getting some increase in red blood cells from that.
Next up is B12. So it looks like over the past month, your B12 level did increase a bit, but it's still below optimized.
Yeah, so his B12 was 327. It's gone up to 424. The range here, they're saying is 200 to 1100. I think there was a study on optimal B12 levels for athletes. I think it was recommending around 600, if I can remember correctly. There's a bit of a range. I think mine's 950. So yeah, not optimal. You could probably get I mean, the B12 is easy as well. Like you just take an oral B12 supplement under your tongue a couple times a week. Super easy. Very low toxicity.
I'm wondering if you made any specific dietary changes, or you added a supplement or anything like that. So B12 rich food, things like seafood and fish.
Okay, yeah, I've been hitting the fish harder. The in July I kind of took a little bit of.
So here's what I mean. So you can see here for B12, these are their recommendations. Eat more mackerel, herring, mussels, and octopus. I mean that is so specific, as if your B12 was low or lower than would be optimal, you're not going to just start eating herring every day. Like it's just take a supplement. Like that's my opinion on it anyway. This would be so much hassle to cook all this stuff.
Next up is your lipid group. So let's see. if we look at your LDL cholesterol, it looks like it bumped up just a couple of points. So it went from 98 to 102.
So his LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, went from 98 to 102. And his good cholesterol, the HDL, went from 76 to 67. So that's not a good shift. Having a good cholesterol drop and your bad cholesterol increase. Although it's not a massive increase. I mean, 98 to 102. Thing with blood tests is it just depends on the time of day. It depends on what day. Like if you've had a day off the bike and you're more relaxed, more recovered, your blood values could change slightly. So, I mean, these shifts aren't massive. I mean, 10, that's nearly 10, that's 11 points, so that would be, but 98 to 102, yeah, not huge. It's kind of why you can't just get like a blood test every year or year and a half, because the changes, you kind of need to get them more regularly, so you're getting rid of that shift you'll see day to day. If you get them blood tests more regularly, I mean.
Over the past month. And so basically I would say the things that would increase your LDL cholesterol. So it might be the difference in training. I mean, it's only a few points, so it could be a bit of the difference in training. Also something that raises LDL cholesterol would be saturated fat.
Yeah, I can provide a little insight into that, which is when
people will still argue whether saturated fat raises your bad cholesterol, and there's no argument. It definitely does. So yeah, there'll be people definitely still, for some reason, still don't understand that. All right, guys, so they go through more blood test results and interpret them. So if you're interested, I'll put the link to this video below. Recommend you go watch it. It's pretty interesting. So I'll end this video there. Hope you found that interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one.